I rise today, as I have many times before, to discuss the urgent need for the United States to have an immigration system that reflects our values as a nation of immigrants. Today, in my first floor speech on the subject since Donald Trump won the election, I am deeply troubled by the fear and panic I hear from our immigrant community, from our young immigrants known as dreamers and their families, to the workers in the field, to those in our restaurant kitchens and our homes. Their panic is justified and palpable because of the inflammatory remarks made by the President-elect on the campaign trail about immigrants. His campaign promises made it seem as if no immigrant was safe from deportation. Even otherwise law-abiding, decent people who came to this country searching for the American dream for themselves and their children. The threat of deportation was heard loud and clear by over 744,000 young, law-abiding immigrants who are American in every way, except for a piece of paper. These dreamers were brought to the United States, many as infants or toddlers, for reasons beyond their control or their knowledge. They grew up in America, going to school. The only flag they've ever pledged allegiance to is that of the United States. The only national anthem they know is the Star-Spangled Banner. The effects of deporting them or their families would be incomprehensible and destructive. The Deferred Action for Children Arrivals program, or DACA, has been a tremendously successful program. It is something I fought for, to allow young men and women to come out of the shadows and step forward to register themselves with our government and make them right. DACA has allowed nearly 800,000 undocumented youth who came to the United States as children, to obtain temporary protection from deportation and a 2-year work permit that is renewable, if they first came forth registered with the government by handing over their personal information and the information of their immediate families, passing a criminal background check, and paying nearly $500 in fees. And we said the information would be confidential and not used against them. Now their fears of deportation are justified. The DACA program has now the potential of becoming a registry of millions of undocumented immigrants who are now exposed for seeking a better life for themselves and their kids. Let's think about this for a second. We asked kids who came to this country through no choice of their own, no decision-making, without any notion that they were doing anything wrong. Many of them didn't even know they were undocumented until they tried to, for example, go to college or get a loan for school, to come out of the shadows, voluntarily turn over their information and the information of their immediate relatives in exchange for protection from deportation, a work permit, and a chance for a better life. And as early as next year, once again through no fault of their own, these young immigrants and their families are at risk of losing it all. The human cost is too high to pay, a cost measured in the thousands of parents separated from their children who are deported, husbands and wives separated from their spouses, millions of families who are torn apart because of our broken immigration system. Among his many campaign promises, President-elect Trump pledged to end the DACA program. This means that DACA recipients, a group of individuals the U.S. government has deemed as otherwise model citizens that pose absolutely no threat to our national security, would be at risk for deportation and could no longer continue working legally. Mr. President, we're here talking about children who have grown up in the United States, children who attend our schools, many of them the valedictorians, salutarians in the top tier of their graduating classes, children who serve our communities, children who were given a chance to be fully integrated into the only country many of them have ever known. I've listened many times to my colleagues talk about the core of family values, and the essence of that core is a family unit. I've listened that you don't subscribe the sins of the parents to the children, and yet those who are advocates of ending DACA would undo all of those things they've spoken to. If the DACA program is dismantled, young immigrants will be stripped of their jobs, education, and forced back into the shadows of our society. In fact, the Center for American Progress finds that ending DACA would cost the United States $433 billion in gross domestic product over the next 10 years. Now, having said that, I am hoping that on election night, when President-elect Trump said, quote, "Now it is time for America to bind the wounds of division." He later said in an interview that millions of undocumented immigrants are, quote, "terrific people." I hope the next administration thinks long and hard about binding the wounds of division. A good start would be a clear and unequivocal message that there will be no mass deportation task force and that the DACA program will continue, something that the President-elect already alluded to this week in an interview with Time magazine, saying, quote, "We're going to work something out that's going to make people happy and proud." Dreamers got brought here at a very young age. They've worked here, they've gone to school here, some were good students, some have wonderful jobs, and they're in Never Never Land because they don't know what's going to happen, close quotes. So it appears to me that hopefully we are getting to a place where there is universal respect and admiration for dreamers. This acknowledgement offers a glimmer of hope for a productive way forward. And I hope that's the case. But let me close by saying the following. I do not intend to sacrifice one set of immigrants for another. Let me be clear about our nation's immigrants. It is not just enough to say dreamers are terrific people. Protecting a temporary program is not enough, although the panic and sense of urgency to protect these young immigrants is justified. It is not enough because the reality is dreamers do not exist in a vacuum. They have parents. They have loved ones who have instilled values and work ethic and supported them to pursue an education and reach their full potential to benefit our country. Their parents are also terrific people, and so are so many other hardworking immigrants who have lived in this country for years, have obeyed the law, are not criminals, and have integrated themselves into the tapestry of American society. We know them. You have to be blind not to know them. They're sitting next to us in the pew in church. They attend parent-teachers conferences. They're our neighbors. They pick our crops. There isn't a person in this country who isn't beholden to an immigrant worker. They watch our kids. They open businesses. They perform back-breaking work that we can't get many Americans to do to keep the gears of this economy turning. Immigration is not an easy problem to fix. But when we came close, I think, in 2013 when the Senate came together to pass comprehensive immigration reform. I was part of that bipartisan gang of eight that produced the bill, which passed with a strong bipartisan support of nearly three-quarters of this chamber. That bill is a strong model for reforming our immigration system as we look ahead to the new Congress. S. 744 addressed the key pillars necessary for a functioning legal immigration system. It addressed the 11 million undocumented, so we can know who is here to pursue the American dream versus who is here to do it harm. It reformed the legal immigration system for high and low-skilled workers. It had strong family reunification provisions. It put dreamers on a path to citizenship, and it included tough border security measures. S. 744 wasn't perfect, but it was a significant milestone in our nation's efforts to truly reform our immigration system. We must remember what our economy and America needs. Our nation will be stronger where there is an accountable path to citizenship for the undocumented living in the U.S. Our borders are secure. Employers are held accountable for who they hire. Jobs are filled with qualified and documented workers who contribute to the economies, and families are kept together. And we don't have downward pressures by an underground economy against the wages of all other Americans. So then, with an immigration system as flawed as ours and with so many things to still fix, DACA has been a beacon of hope, one shining light leading the way towards fairness, justice, and a better life for so many young immigrants looking for a chance to succeed in America as Americans. Yes, abolishing it would be a tragic mistake for an administration seeking to unite what they helped divide. But let me be clear, as I have said all along, we cannot lose our sight of our ultimate objective. The only real solution in the end is a permanent legislative solution that doesn't pick winners and losers amongst the most vulnerable in our society. That's why I'm pleased to once again see a bipartisan coalition of voices begin to resurface so we can work towards a bipartisan moment to fix our immigration system once and for all. Because beyond stopping those who wish to turn the clock back on any progress we have made, we still need to implement a functioning legal immigration system for all. We need to make sure we don't take a giant step back and focus our nation's resources against the most vulnerable, talented, and hardworking. I have always been and remain committed to solving this problem in a fair, comprehensive manner that reforms our immigration system. And I will continue to work with a bipartisan coalition of voices towards this goal. Our dreamers, their parents, immigrant families, and our nation deserve nothing less. Irrelevant of who occupies the White House, I'll never stop fighting for those who, like my mother, came to this country in the last century to give their families a chance to contribute to America's exceptionalism, and for all those who still await for us to give them a chance to contribute to America's exceptionalism in this century. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.